Welcome back, America. Another very smart man, our buddy Newt Gingrich, who used to sit back there as speaker and watch presidents speak. I'm sure this time it would have been very difficult. It was a grueling, exhausting speech, not for Biden, but for the rest of us. You know, Newt, it's been 3 days since he gave the speech. I think it'll go down in history, if it goes down at all, as the worst State of the Union speech in history. But I want to get a little beyond that. I watched this speech. It's very upsetting, very frustrating, the serial lies and distractions and all the rest. But I started really taking a measure of this man, Joe Biden. You know, he's been around a long time. We've been around a long time. We think we know who he is. But the extent at his core and his soul of who he really is, I thought came out big time during the course of that speech. When you watch that speech, surely in your mind you were thinking similarly, what am I dealing with here? What are we as a nation dealing with? What were your thoughts?
To have somebody who is such a vicious, dishonest liar standing in front of you and know that you can't get up and jump him, you can't hit him in the back of the head. And I thought Johnson, he would nod no, he would laugh at things that were absurd. So I want to give him some credit here. I wasn't surprised. I have for a long time concluded that Joe Biden is a dishonest, lying, corrupt person who has no regard for his own country, who is pathetic in his inability to protect America anywhere in the world, and who, frankly, I think is rapidly going to become maybe the second worst president in American history. And I think that it's just astonishing to watch him. But I thought the speech the other night was beyond the pale. I went back and read Harry Truman's 1948 State of the Union. It is patriotic, unifying, visionary. The comparison, because Truman's clearly their model, and Truman in September and October was very partisan. But in January and February, he was the president of the whole country. What we saw, I think, the other night was we don't have a commander-in-chief. We have a Democrat-in-chief. We don't have a president. We have a chairman of the Democratic National Committee. And I think it is a disgraceful performance.
And, of course, he's celebrated in the Democrat Party media, but not by very many other people. Do you think this is a consequence of him and half a century of him? Or do you think, because he's so chameleon-like, that it's really the Democrat Party and the radical elements of the Democrat Party that are leading this direction, or is it him that's leading the party?
No, I mean, I think he's sort of evolved this way, but it's also that he's surrounded now. Think of this as the third Barack Obama term. He's surrounded by left-wingers. They have a worldview that is radically different than us. You know, you really have in this country today two alternative realities. You have a group of people who believe that if you bribe the Iranians and you abandon Israel and you accept, people can have 297 different sexual identities, et cetera, then you're a good person. They believe that. I mean, you have to at least give them credit that they are genuinely weird and that they are sincerely weird. Biden has decided that he's part of the weirdness and that, therefore, it has to be good because he's for it. But this is, in fact, probably the most corrupt man ever to be president. He's a man who is a serial liar. He's closer to the Sopranos than he is to a normal American president. They accomplished two things, I have to be in all honesty. They proved he could, in fact, speak energetically for over an hour and I thought pretty intelligently, drift out of the House chambers slowly, proving he had enough extra energy, enough ability to engage. So they got that out of the way. Second, they destroyed any effort to get him off the ticket. If you watch the number of Democrats jumping up yelling 4 more years, there's not going to be any effort to dump Joe Biden. So at one level, if I were Donald Trump, I'd feel this was a pretty good speech because he just locked down that he is going to be the Democratic nominee. And as the New York Times reported last Sunday, and what I thought was an amazing article, their chief analyst, Nate Cohen, said, people just don't like Biden. That's his biggest problem.
Well, what's to like? I mean, his personality is horrendous. What's to like? The way he speaks and the way he attacks people? Let me ask you this. You said he's the second worst president ever. Who's the first? I can think of Buchanan. I can think of Woodrow Wilson. Who would you say is the worst?
I think you have to say Buchanan because he allowed the South to seize all the federal arsenals, and he allowed the concept of secession to grow under his presidency. An aggressive, if you go back and look at how Andrew Jackson, a generation earlier, handled the idea of secession, and he was going to mobilize the Army and South Carolina back down. Had we had an Andrew Jackson in the 1850s, we probably wouldn't have had a civil war.
Of course, the Democrats hate Andrew Jackson, too, even though he was a Democrat. Let me ask you this about Joe Biden. Joe Biden threw in with the worst racist segregationist senators imaginable: Eastland, Stennis, Talmadge, Byrd, when he came into the Senate. He was not just the young, sophomore coming into the Senate or junior coming into the freshman. He was a leader, and he wrote legislation, and he got Eastland to back it to oppose integration and so forth and so on. Now he walks around like he's the great hope. He's the savior of democracy. How dare you challenge him and challenge his viewpoints and so forth. How does he get away with this transition from one of the big-time segregationist racists 50 years ago to really pretending to be the great hope?
Well, first of all, remember that Delaware 50 years ago was a dramatically more conservative and more southern state. It was actually more sympathetic to Jesse Helms than it was to John Lewis. Second, you cannot overstate the importance of the elite news media. They're going to cover Biden. They're going to protect Biden. They're going to defend Biden. They hate Trump so deeply that no matter what Biden does, they're going to prop him up because he's the only hope they have of stopping Trump from getting to be president again. And the prospect of a Trump presidency is so terrifying if you are in the news media that anything you can do, no matter how big the lie, anything you can do counts. You may remember that in the 1930s, the New York Times won a Pulitzer Prize for a correspondent in Moscow who explicitly, deliberately lied about Stalin, refused to report on the famine that killed 10 million people in Ukraine, and was generally a despicable person. Got a Pulitzer Prize. Well, the same thing's going on here. This is comparable to the degree to which they lied about Castro and the degree to which they lied about Stalin. And all of the elite media has joined the New York Times in a conspiracy of dishonesty, trying to prop up Biden and, more importantly, trying to stop Donald Trump.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.